You ever hear a story so quiet, it screams? A family of 4, no enemies, no debts, no signs of fear. They packed up their lives in the dead of night, chasing a promise, and were never seen again. No bodies, no clues, no goodbyes. Just a stranger in a pickup truck and the chilling silence of the Canadian wilderness. Welcome to Whims and Whispers. Tonight we explore one of the most unnerving vanishings in Canadian history, the Jack family disappearance. Was it a tragic crime, a paranormal breach, or something more sinister hidden in the trees? Light the candle and listen closely, because once this begins, you might start to feel watched too. It was supposed to be a new beginning, a way out of the grind. Ronald Jack had just been offered work, good pay, solid hours, housing included, a fresh start for his young family in British Columbia's quiet north. But within hours of shaking that stranger's hand, the Jack family was gone, vanished. Ronald, Doreen, and their 2 boys, Russell and Ryan, simply disappeared into the night. No signs of struggle, no witnesses, no calls home, just packed bags, a quiet departure, and a truck no one ever found again. Authorities searched. The community pleaded. But all that was left was silence. No trace has surfaced in over 35 years. No bodies, no crime scene, no closure. And the man who offered the job, he never existed. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was an erasure. Tonight on Whims and Whispers, we follow the shadows of a family that walked into the dark and never returned. And we ask the question that still haunts the northern winds of Canada. What really happened to the Jack family? August 1st, 1989. The heat of summer hung heavy in Prince George, British Columbia, a small working-class city fringed by endless forest. Ronald Jack, 26 years old, a devoted father, quiet, hardworking, stopped by a neighborhood pub after his shift. He wasn't looking for trouble, just a drink, maybe a break from the weight of bills, of responsibility, of starting over. That's where he met him. A man described by witnesses as white, tall, heavy-set, with a full red beard and long hair pulled under a cowboy-style hat. His boots had fringe. He stood out, but not enough to raise alarm. He told Ronald about a job, a logging camp near Klukul's Lake. Remote, but good money. Ronald and his wife, Doreen, could both work. Kitchen duty for her, tree cutting, and camp setup for him. Childcare provided. Transport included. They could leave tonight. It sounded too good to be true. But Ronald didn't hesitate. He called his mother that night, telling her excitedly that he'd found a way to support his family, and they'd be away for at least 10 days. She said he sounded calm, optimistic. Later that night, under a sky littered with stars and the hum of crickets, Ronald and Doreen packed up their sons, Russell, age 9, and Ryan, just 4 years old. The family quietly left their modest home in Prince George. They were last seen stepping into the stranger's dark pickup truck. No one ever saw them again. August 2nd. Ronald doesn't show up for work. Doreen doesn't call any friends or family. The boys miss daycare. No activity on their bank accounts. No use of their social insurance numbers. It was as if the entire family had evaporated. Days pass, then weeks. RCMP searched the Klukuls Lake area. They speak to logging camps. No one had heard of any new hires, especially not a couple with 2 children. No such job offer was ever posted. No man matching the stranger's description was identified. The truck, possibly a dark-colored 4x4 with a camper shell, was never found. There were no calls, no demands, no signs of a break-in or violence. Just emptiness. Years pass. In 1996, 7 years later, police receive a chilling anonymous call. The caller claims the Jack family's remains are buried on a rural property south of Prince George, but the tip leads nowhere. The property yields no answers. And again, the silence returns. Present day. The case remains open, filed under, unsolved. The Jack family, erased from the record with the eerie precision of someone who planned it all, or something far stranger. For most disappearances, there's a trail, a broken window, a last phone call, a ping off a cell tower. But with the Jack family, there was nothing. And that nothingness is what makes this case so terrifying. The man with no name. Witnesses at the pub described the stranger clearly. Tall, white, stocky, red hair and beard, cowboy-style boots with fringe. Friendly, calm, charismatic. But here's the first anomaly. No one ever found him. Not in mugshots, not in logging employment records, not in bar receipts. He introduced himself, but not a single person can recall his name. It was as if he appeared just for that moment and disappeared with them. A ghost with a pickup truck. The phantom job offer. Ronald told his mother there were jobs waiting, 10 days of steady work, camp housing, and free childcare. The camp allegedly sat somewhere near Klukuls Lake, but RCMP searched every known operation in that area. No logging company had hired anyone named Jack. No camp was expecting new arrivals. No kitchen position was listed. That job never existed. A working-class man with a family of 4 doesn't gamble everything on a lie unless it feels real. So what convinced him? Was it desperation? Or was it something else? The truck that was never seen again. Ronald, Doreen, and the boys climbed into a dark pickup, described as a 4x4 with a camper on the back. That vehicle has never been located. No traffic cameras captured it. No campers matching the description were pulled over, spotted, or reported. It's as if that truck had been waiting for them, and then melted into the trees. The children's belongings. The Jack family left with no hesitation. They took a few clothes. Doreen packed some essentials. But here's what's unsettling. Toys, diapers, medication. Things you'd never leave behind for a trip with a 4-year-old. Some believe they were rushed. Others suggest they were drugged or manipulated. Or that they never made it to their destination at all. The anonymous 1996 phone call. 7 years later, a call came to RCMP. A male voice claimed, "They're buried on the south end of that property. No name, no motive." And when authorities searched the location, they found nothing. The land was clean. But what's worse, the caller was never identified, and the voice was never heard again. The psychological profile. Ronald wasn't erratic. He was stable, reliable. Doreen was cautious, family-oriented. Friends described them as protective parents. So why would they entrust their children to a man they just met? Could it be manipulation, brainwashing, or was something whispered to Ronald that we'll never understand? Anomalous silence. No ransom. No demands. No rumors in the criminal underworld. Nothing leaked. Nothing slipped. It's the silence itself that screams the loudest. And if someone could make 4 people vanish this completely, how many others could disappear the same way, without us ever knowing they were gone? When a family disappears this cleanly, without noise, trace, or witness, the mind scrambles for meaning. Was it a calculated crime? A desperate escape? Or something far more otherworldly? Let's examine the possibilities, from the grounded to the grotesque. Theory 1. Premeditated murder by a serial predator. This is the most grounded theory, and it's also the most terrifying, that the man in the bar was a serial predator. He knew exactly what to say. He spotted Ronald's vulnerability, young father, low income, desperate to provide. He dangled the bait. 10 days, good money, childcare provided. Then he isolated them, took them off grid, and did something unspeakable. The lack of struggle suggests psychological manipulation or a highly practiced method. Some even believe this was not his first time. A drifter, a hunter, a man who made families disappear without a trace. Theory 2, voluntary vanishing, a planned disappearance. Could Ronald and Doreen have planned this? Could they have wanted to disappear? Maybe they were overwhelmed by poverty, pressure, or something darker behind closed doors. But there's no evidence they were fleeing danger, no withdrawals from their accounts, no contact with relatives, no sightings in other provinces. If it was voluntary, they vanished better than trained fugitives and left behind 2 entire families to grieve, without closure. That's not starting over. That's erasing yourself. Theory 3, paranormal intervention, the spirits of the forest. Here's where the story takes on a whisper of the supernatural. The Jack family disappeared near the Highway of Tears, a desolate stretch of Canadian road tied to dozens of Indigenous disappearances. Some locals believe the land itself is cursed, a place where spirits of the wronged and forgotten pull the living into the woods. Elders from nearby nations have told stories of shapeshifters and forest mimics, beings that take on human form to lure victims. The friendly man at the bar, the job that didn't exist, the perfect silence. Could it have been something not human at all? Theory 4, UFO abduction. It sounds outrageous, but listen carefully. The speed and precision of the disappearance, the total lack of remains or evidence. These are hallmark signs in well-documented alien abduction cases. In 1989, British Columbia was a hotbed for UFO sightings, especially in the mountainous areas around Prince George. One report, filed just weeks earlier, described a beam of light lifting something from the trees near Klukul's lake. Could the Jack family have stumbled into something not of this world? Theory 5, government cover-up or criminal conspiracy. Another chilling idea. What if the man at the bar wasn't just a random predator? What if he was part of something larger, something organized? Human trafficking, illegal logging, or covert experimentation? The promise of a remote job, the remote lake, the total lack of records, all suspicious, all controlled. And then the anonymous 1996 phone call. A buried body tip that led nowhere. Who made that call? Someone with a conscience? Or someone trying to throw police off the real trail? Theory 6. Shared delusion or psychological collapse. There's one more theory, one that chills the bone because it's so human. What if something broke inside Ronald? A psychotic snap, a shared delusion. History is full of cases where one parent believes the world is ending and convinces the family to go with them into the dark. But Ronald was calm, Doreen was grounded, and if there was a breakdown, where's the aftermath? The wreckage? The evidence? Vanished is not the same as dead, and yet it feels so final. Some cases are loud, splashed across headlines, picked apart by talking heads, but others are quiet, too quiet. The disappearance of the Jack family is one of those stories, a mystery buried not just in the woods of northern Canada, but in the fabric of a deeper, more painful truth. Generational silence, a familiar grief for Indigenous communities. Ronald and Doreen Jack were part of the Cheslata Carrier Nation, whose people had already endured displacement when their ancestral lands were flooded for a hydroelectric project decades earlier. Their story did not begin with their disappearance. It began with being overlooked again and again by government, by media, by justice. When they vanished, it wasn't the first time a First Nations family had gone missing without urgency. Their loved ones were forced to grieve in limbo, stuck in that cruel space between hope and heartbreak, where you don't know whether to mourn or keep searching. And for Indigenous communities across Canada, that kind of grief is generational. It's been passed down like an heirloom, wrapped in pain, silence, and systemic neglect. The Highway of Tears, a landscape of vanishing. The Jack family lived in Prince George, the very city where the infamous Highway of Tears begins. Over 40 Indigenous women and girls have vanished or been found murdered along this lonely stretch of road. Despite decades of outcry, progress is slow, leads go cold, cases are under-resourced. The Jack case is rarely listed among them, but it should be, because they too are part of the legacy, a family that simply vanished, and a silence that no one seemed to rush to fill. The spirit of the forest, folklore turned omen. For the Carrier people and many other First Nations, the forests are sacred and haunted. They are places of power, of memory, of presence, and sometimes of disappearance. Stories handed down through generations speak of beings who walk in human form, offering kindness only to lead the unsuspecting away forever. These beings often appear as wanderers, strangers, helpers. They ask you to trust them, and when you do, you are never seen again. Some elders whisper that the man in the pub, with his red beard, soft voice, and perfect timing, fits these stories too well to ignore. Systemic erasure, the vanishing inside the vanishing. The deeper you go into this story, the more chilling one truth becomes. They were erased and then forgotten. For years, the case remained cold. Media coverage dried up. The family's name slipped from public consciousness. Why? Because they were indigenous? Because they were poor? Because there were no photos that could go viral? This isn't just about what happened to them. It's about how easily they were allowed to disappear. Modern paranoia, the quiet fear we all carry now. In an age of hyperconnectivity, most of us think we're too visible to vanish. But this story reminds us, anyone can be taken. Not just murdered, but vanished. Not just by force, but by persuasion. All it took was one encounter, one conversation, one offer. That's what chills people most when they hear about the Jack family. Not just that they disappeared, but that they agreed to go. And in that realization, we see ourselves. The disappearance of the Jack family is more than a cold case. It's a mirror, a reflection of whose stories we care about and whose we let fade into the trees. Sometimes, the scariest mysteries don't scream, they whisper. They vanish without a sound and take everything with them. The disappearance of the Jack family is more than just an unsolved case. It's a shadow that still lingers over the forests of British Columbia, a quiet warning that even in a world full of cameras and connections, you can still be erased. No goodbyes, no answers, just silence. This has been Whims and Whispers. If tonight's mystery held you, share it with someone who still listens to the dark. Tap subscribe so you don't miss the next voice that speaks from the stillness. And remember, some stories disappear, not because they're over,